Well, I think his family came from there, were chased from there, to be honest, weren't they? So he probably had more of an what I find that in this jurisdiction that people have no understanding of what it would be like to live in the north as the minority. And I mean, I would like to remind everybody that there was there was no vote about whether that state should exist or not. You know, there may be something about a united Ireland, but there was never anything about the six counties being established as a separate state. And for 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 people to live in it without proper housing rights or job rights and all, you know, so John would know that as he was looking there. They were chased out, you know, chased off the land, and that's a bit of a diversion, but I would like the DUP to think about that. You
Yeah,
know,
and it's well, even being in John's terrain around Mohill last month, so much of that history is present. You don't have to reach far at all to come up against it, and it's because a century is a very short time.
of
100 years is
course
a very short time.
it is, of course, and yeah, it has to change. You know, I mean, this is not really about John now, but it has to change. You can't go on with it like this. And then, um, just as a thought that, you know, people of the name of Donaldson were probably O'Donnells. And if they retained the name O'Donnell, they were pushed into Donegal. And if they took the name Donaldson, they were allowed to be absorbed into the major society. So, you know,
Well, John Taylor's family had very, very strong links back into Mohill
is that
and that
right?
hinterland. So
Okay.
it's all very, very close. Uh, you
Well,
know,
maybe that's why they're so insistent on being related to only the one place that they say they come from.
um, conscious, Stephen, that this year marks the centenary of partition and the creation of the state of Northern Ireland and
Hmm.
all the sensitivities around that. But I suppose in the uh, and I'm going to ask you in a little while to read something of John's from That They May Face the Rising Sun,
Yeah.
which I suppose takes a hard and realistic enough look at the politics of commemoration and the difficulties of that, of how we remember and what to remember. But I suppose in the broader scheme of things, I wonder for yourself, do do you hope that there will be a border poll and potentially some form of unity on this island in your lifetime, or should we be looking at potentially other ways of living together?
Well, you can't go on with the artificial majority that was created when partition happened. And that's what it was there to do, was to allow unionists a majority with the hope that the Catholics would all run across the border into what they thought was their natural home. But so you can't go on with that. I mean, and all they're talking about at the moment is a collusion of all the unionist groups, so that there couldn't possibly be a nationalist first minister. This is absolutely disgraceful, because if there's a majority of people who vote for the nationalist parties, then that should be acknowledged in the setup that occurs. It's just the old unionist thing. We have to be in charge. And that has brought nothing but disaster to the North. And I think you'll find if the nationalists were in charge that they wouldn't be like they're a lot more civil, and they appreciate lots of areas of Presbyterian history where the first Catholic church in Belfast was the nationalists contributed enormously to that, because they thought it was obscene that there was no Catholic church. That's St. Mary's, and the Presbyterian church in Rosemary Street. There was a room where a hiding place where they used to hide the Catholic priests. In the time of when they were forbidden to exist, and it just
the history of 1798.
Exactly, that's what that is, yeah. And of course it is, and the decency of that, that's what I must say. This is what the Presbyterians have to recover.
Do you recognise Colin Thabin's recent observation that some Protestants in the North regard the Republic as a very strange and foreign place and don't want to be under its sway? Is that still valid, and what can be done about it?
Well, they're always going to say that. In fact, business people find it very comforting as a place, because even more comforting than I do. I find the savagery of some of the business arrangements very off-putting indeed, But look, they're going on about the protocol, but under the protocol, they've actually got access to Britain, they've got access to Europe, they've got much more freedom than anywhere else in the so-called United Kingdom. I think they just got to get on with it and stop that closed mentality. Actually, I have a place in Donegal. I go there. An awful lot of northern people, and then not just the Catholics who go there at the time of the 12th of July. There's an awful lot of Protestant people who go there and who love it. Of course they do. Just got to get on with it. Come on, 100 years is too long. That kind, it was obscene what they did to the Catholic people there.
Can't stop change.
Just awful. I mean, the stories of being kept out of houses, and but
art history and history that can't be ignored.
I don't think that the South is that strange a place at all.
I mean, no stranger than most countries.
I think it's I mean, I'd say that some of the Fine Gael and Fianna Fáil are as strange to me as the Unionists. They are. I can't think the way they think. It's tough, yeah.
Yeah, and again, John's brilliant observation. This is the sort of conversation you would hear, and I suppose again it holds or reflects something of the tension that's still there when we seek to commemorate, when we seek to remember and commemorate. Whose history is it? How is it told? How is it honoured? Who is honoured? And all of that is obviously so pertinent in these years.
Yeah, but I mean, because I experienced the North, and people that I knew experienced it before the Troubles and during the Troubles and now after the Troubles, I feel differently than people on this side of the border. What I think is they had a very tame celebration of 1916, and I think, get real. This was the first country to leave the empire, a disgusting empire. Let's be quite clear about it. And they're still showing how disgusting they can be in trying to stay away from the EU and joining with America and Australia to try and take the nuclear thing away from France. And I mean, I met a man in Paris when I was buying some toys before a few years ago, and the man in the toy shop said, "Why are the British leaving the EU?" And I said, "I don't really." He said, "This is a wonderful community." He said Paris was inundated with Germans during the Second World War. He says, and now we do business with them. You know, it has been a great achievement, it seems to me, and I think the fact of having the EU at our back when we were talking about Brexit with the British gave particularly Simon Coveney a great sense of pride and
it was practical support.
Yes, actual practical support, and you're reminded that, you know, the Irish were Europeans long before the British were, you know, and contributed to the whole, you know, before the English took over, they contributed an awful lot to the whole notion of European identity. Sorry, I'm such a bore. No,
no, it's fascinating. It's fascinating, and it's true. I mean, but I suppose even within that context, you come down to the nitty gritty at times of how on this island we commemorate, we remember, and move forward with that. And as I say, it is sensitive. It is particular. And you know, I was.
But Vincent, if I just may say, don't forget that the 1916 was celebrated more by people in India than it was by people in Ireland, because it had given the people in that part of the world the incentive to look for their own independence, and look at the way the British withdrew from that subcontinent. I mean, disgusting. So
no, it was a spark, undoubtedly, and
yeah.
I mean, look at the way the Americans withdrew from Afghanistan. Look at, you know, it's
shocking.
The way empires withdraw is usually not a very pretty sight. Talking to Owen McNamee recently, Stephen, we were talking about the border and some of his memories, and a new piece. He's working on a new novel which draws on his own memories of violence and criminality around the parts of the border, and the north and the south and all that. And so, you know, it strikes me that there's a number of really significant writers, you know, like Owen, like Anna Burns, Lisa McGee with Derry Girls, David Park, Eugene McCabe, this side of the border. Kearney Doherty is a new voice, again articulating things that are really important for us to hear and confront and know somehow, and we need to know what to move forward. But and again, it's a bit like John McGahern. I think, you know, we owe a huge debt to the writers, to the artists who are sort of unflinching in what they consider.
Yeah, I mean, they're ahead of us all, really, aren't they? And even Friel with translations, for instance, you know, how it allowed people to question that whole area. No, I think it's, and the Derry Girls with incredible humour show how independent Derry people by nature are, you know, and how awful it was for them to have been gerrymandered out of existence, you know.